All hands, this is the Admiral. My fellow Star Trek fans, this day brings terrible news. On this anniversary of a national tragedy for Americans and for all who love science and exploration, we will be having a special tribute at the end of this broadcast. But for now, we need to talk about saving Star Trek. Red Alert! The new Trek movie, in both its guises, rolls forward. Last week I told you about how if you check IMDB, and these links will be in the description, if you check IMDB, you'll see there's not one but two Star Trek movies out there being pitched. Now, don't be fooled, both of these are probably the same movie. Kalinda Vazquez Star Trek Project and Star Trek 14, aka Star Trek 4, is the same project. This NuTrek movie birthed from the desecrated corpse of Star Trek Picard, which was the desecrated corpse of Star Trek The Next Generation, is going to be rotting on display on Paramount Plus in just 3 weeks. Do not watch this show. Do not subscribe to Paramount Plus. I will bring you the events of this show. When it premieres, I will play-by-play dissect it. And after every episode, I will criticize what they got wrong. And it will probably take me a long time. But right now, on this ship, we have a library computer. And let me tell you something. If you could like or follow this channel, you'd be doing me a huge favor. We are stronger with you than without you. And what we need to do is make sure that these threats to Star Trek are dealt with and do not materialize. The only thing we have going for us now is that they have no one truly interested in funding either of these movies. Now, the danger that we've seen is that the creators from Bad Robot, or as we call it, Bad Reboot, and Secret Hideout, and I would hide too if I wrote this garbage, they're very dishonest, underhanded, and seductive. We've seen them destroy our heroes. Patrick Stewart was well liked before show Picard. Now, people wouldn't piss on him if he was burning. Through bad, lackluster performances as Professor X here and there, where he wasn't always good, to a terrible 3-season run of Picard where they have to wipe away each season to do the next because they can't write with any continuity, we have a new enemy. This new Star Trek movie and this Kelvin Star Trek movie are birthed from the same idea, that they have to get Star Trek 14 out. The movie is about 8 years late according to the timing from Star Trek Beyond, but really, Star Trek Beyond was about 4 or 5 years late. So what we're talking about here is a 12-year, 13-year late movie. Star Trek 09 was in 09, of course. Then we very quickly got Into Darkness, a movie with no context and no setup that needed a Space Seed movie to make sense. J.J. Abrams never wanted to be bothered with the details, knows, in his mind at least, a mystery is a payoff in itself. And the mystery we're going to be examining here is from Trek Culture, a Star Trek-oriented YouTube channel with 254,000 subscribers. They're doing a lot better than the Admiral. And they have a huge platform to blast out this nonsense. Now, I have in the past called Star Trek NuTrek creator Terry Matalas fan-hating. That stands to reason. And I've called him a liar. And I'm going to give examples of why he's a liar right now. We were told that Star Trek Discovery would have a new crew every season. That didn't happen. We were told that Star Trek Picard would be a continuation of The Next Generation. It absolutely wasn't. We were told that Star Trek Strange New Worlds would be less dark and less horrible. That couldn't be further from the truth. Did they do better at lampshading their darkness and put in a glib joke here and there? Perhaps, but the show was as bad as ever, and we saw their new weapon. An inaccessible first episode where nothing happens that drives sheep-like people to IMDB, Rotten Tomatoes, and other places to give the show a high rating. Now, when the floor falls out and the show just absolutely explodes and implodes, no one goes back to fix their rating, so they sell box sets. This is a con, ladies and gentlemen. This is a con.
Our good friends over at SFX Magazine have walloped us in the face with some interviews with Terry Matalas, Jonathan Frakes, and Gates McFadden.
Oh my God!
Ahead of the release of Star Trek Picard's third season on the 16th of February.
So only 3 more weeks. Prepare yourselves.
Now, before we go into all that, please make sure you're doing all the usuals. Follow us over on Twitter at Trek Culture and on Instagram at Trek Culture YT. Follow me.
If you want to do that, do it. But you should follow me on my social media, because on this channel, we have social media. And you can follow the Admiral at TMCTEAG on Twitter. Pirate Admiral Teag's my handle. But unfortunately, we're not quite done with this horrible and quite frankly frightening display from the people at Trek Culture. Let's let you get a look at what they're showing us, and boy, could it ever be described as nothing but frightening.
For myself, Sean Ferrick, follow the editor, the wonderful at Edit Chris Edit. Yous are all awesome.
As you can see, there's nothing new here, but I'd like you to have a look at our pal Sean Ferrick, who is the moderator or the host of this parasitical Star Trek, NuTrek propaganda.
Summarize this entire set of news and to tease.
So Sean likes that little mark over the A. What can I tell you? I speak American, not Irish, English, but you know, I do have some Irish ancestry, as the name Admiral Teag might tell you. So, you know, Sean, you know, it looks like a few members of my family here. He's as pasty and white as the Admiral himself, and a ginger. So, you know, I hate to say it, but he would never find himself on a dramatic Star Trek show where ginger side is real.
Tease you. This is the end. Or is it? Looking ahead to season 3 of Star...
Oh, God, must we? Sean, you're all right. But we've seen enough of the video for now. We're going to go back to stealth mode, and Ensign, raise the shields. Thank you. There is no more real visual element to be seen, because from here on in, Sean is just showing us magazine covers, out of context scenes, action sequences, and it's a decent video essay about Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation, but it's things we've seen before. It's nothing new, or I would show you, and we've seen Sean, so let's let him have his say here about how we're getting slapped in the face with all this great quality Star Trek.
Star Trek Picard. What we are really getting from this drop of news is that things we knew already. This is a massive cinematic event. Everyone is back. Everyone gets something to do.
Yes.
But what this set of interviews is really hammering home is that while this might be the end of Star Trek Picard,
oh, thank God,
it is not necessarily the end of Star Trek The Next Generation.
Oh no. Where are you going with this, Ferrick?
Interviewed by Darren Scott for SFX, Terry Matalas.
Okay, now we're going to drop the cloaking device for just a moment here, and we need to really drop it so that you can see Terry Matalas here. Now, time to do some imitations. Look at that face! That's the face of a predator right there! Terry Matalas, no friend to Star Trek fans. I have called him a liar, and I would say look at his promises for logical, sensible, optimistic Star Trek, one show after another, season after season, and I would say calling him a liar, while he may not have directly said something that was untrue, he's made a liar of himself over and over by being unable to judge his own shows, or he did just outright lie to us, knowing these shows were dark, horrible, illogical, and made no sense. Sean, keep going.
Confirmed that, in a way, he'd rather look at this series not so much as Star Trek Picard, but almost as Star Trek Legacy.
Oh no. Now, it's time for me to re-engage the cloak here. We've seen enough. We all know now what Sean looks like, and you've seen the destroyer of Star Trek, Terry Matalas. So there's no need to stay with any more of this repurposed video about this repurposed story from a repurposed franchise. Now let's just be clear. The first person to talk about rebooting The Next Generation was none other than Quentin Tarantino when he was making his bid to be the Star Trek creator. Now, they were never going to let this happen over at Secret Hideout and Bad Reboot, because then Star Trek would have been shown to be a very easy to enjoy, very fun franchise, and it would have been nominated for an Academy Award because of who directed it. It just would have. Quentin Tarantino attracts the hardware from Hollywood. He does. So don't believe any of these insane articles or assertions about how we dodged a bullet with not having a Best Picture Star Trek. What were they going to do? Kill off the Kelvin cast? Well, that's been done by time anyway. They've timed out of their contracts. We didn't get as many movies as we were supposed to. They will have to be paid again. The plan A to have their movie did not work out. Plan B to recast the movie with certain new people, including Chris Hemsworth as Kirk, which would have been weird as hell considering we'd seen him on screen as Kirk's father. That just got too expensive. And this other Star Trek project on IMDB, Kalinda Vazquez Star Trek Project, which is not Star Trek 14, but is just another way of putting what they hope would be a pleasing shape upon these horrible turds of movies that no one will pay for. If we get one, we will get both. The Next Generation cast, they're in movies too. They can do a Next Generation movie and satisfy that contract. Right now, that's a desperation move. The only thing that I'm fairly sure of is that this movie will come out on December 23rd of this year, 2023, as they have so threatened.
Because it follows on directly, of course, from The Next Generation, but also brings in Voyager. We sort of knew that already in the fact that it features 7 of 9.
7 of 9. And you know, it hurts to be told this by Sean, because even though he's got a sort of douchey Dulce and Gabbana sweat jacket on, he's wearing Friends of Garak t-shirt, and you know, we all loved Garak from Deep Space Nine, and they're going to shit on Deep Space Nine and Voyager in this new Star Trek project, which may be a streaming movie or a theatrical movie. We're getting one or the other, not both, but when we get one, we will be getting both, because they're going to combine these projects the way they combine the motion picture, and the way these lesser creators took that idea and ran with it to make a mishmash Star Trek Beyond, which could not rise above the mandates of the producers. Jeremy Lin didn't do the worst job. It was a better movie than we ever saw from J.J. Abrams, ever. Simon Pegg didn't do the worst job. It was a better story than we ever got from J.J. Abrams. But that's when we learned the term franchise fatigue.
But the fact that they're really making a point of this makes me wonder, are we going to see a little bit more? Not only that,
but what?
But they also discuss revisiting Deep Space Nine as
Please no.
well. If not the actual station, I am assuming via the character of Worf.
Pacifist Worf. This is my no shit line for Pacifist Worf. Now remember, they're very profane in Star Trek now, so he can just say it like this. Commander Riker, if you would be so good as to have sex with Deanna in front of me, it would satisfy my pacifist need to be a cocked Klingon.
We will get some idea of what's been happening with the crew of Deep Space Nine in the years that have passed since Nemesis.
This is not the crew of Deep Space Nine, and since Nemesis, nothing has happened.
Having said all of that, when asked if Season 3 of Picard was always going to be the great return of the Next Generation,
great.
Matalas was very quick to shut that down.
Matalas, very quick to shut things down, very quick to say upsetting things, very quick to shoot off a very bitter and angry tweet. Terry Matalas has said he has created entire episodes of Star Trek just to upset people.
Frankly, no, he said. He came onto the show during season 2, which meant he was...
So, in other words, Terry Matalas allegedly is not to blame for all the nonsense that happened up to this point. And now we're going to get better and good Star Trek because Terry Matalas himself has come down from his ivory tower to take charge.
Not a part of the plans during season 1 at all. And in season 1, it was most definitely not the plan.
There was never any plan.
They all talk about how it had to feel earned, that they had to get there. And in discussions with Patrick Stewart, Akiva Goldsman, and Alex Kurtzman during season 2, those plans, they started to solidify.
Oh, God. The idea that they had plans. Sean, come on. And Sean is about 30% of the way through his picture.
A little bit more. There was a degree of convincing everyone, but look, obviously it's paid off.
All right, this is where Sean just indulges into pure fantasy. His statements rely on themselves to be true.
When asked at recent Comic-Con about, would this be the end for all of these characters as well, a lot of the cast were quick to go, no.
Now we're seeing the cast of Star Trek, Picard, and boy, have our opinions of them ever changed since the last time we saw them. And once again, I'm going to drop the cloak here so that you can take a look at what they hath wrought upon us. Here they are. And in the far left, wearing the 1701, it looks like the honestly, it looks like the 1701 Constitution class t-shirt. So inappropriate really for this event. And what else would be more appropriate for Terry Matalas? But here's Terry Matalas next to our wonderful Gates McFadden, someone we've always loved. And, here we can see the various other people from Star Trek. And depending upon how deep into it they were is how much we, either can or can't stand them. Geordi, he's shot off his mouth a few times. It's unfortunate. Michael Dorn's still largely unscathed, but we know that his pacifist Klingon is going to make us all sick. Patrick Stewart, deeply, deeply, deeply implicated. If we were to have a Star Trek Nuremberg trial, he would be incriminated to the greatest degree. He is the kingpin. He is the largest enabler of this garbage, and by giving it his validation, he has betrayed all that we saw in The Next Generation. Recently, I watched an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, and it was Picard-centric. And I found myself having to consciously work on not being annoyed by liar Patrick Stewart. Next to him, we see collaborator Jonathan Frakes. Frakes, a collaborator, has asked to be the director of Star Trek 14 and been turned down, which leads me to believe with the leaving of Matt Shakman, the genius Matt Shakman, who has left to direct the genius from WandaVision, who has left to direct the Fantastic Four because he's such a great storyteller. He's too big and too accomplished for Star Trek. So Jonathan Frakes here has asked to be a part of it. Brent Spinner, my Twitter buddy, he talks to the Admiral once in a while. He's been in all of this, but he's seemed so flat and removed and uninterested in being part of it and sort of self-aware that I don't blame him as much, but certainly an enabler. And of course, Troy, no one very happy with Troy these days after some of the things she's done and said, not only enabling Star Trek, but, she did sort of spike the football on a lot of people during a very tough time on Twitter when she said some very unfortunate things about the way they run Texas, and gosh knows during a disaster is no time to spike the football on people. But let's get back to our pal Sean Farrick and Trek Culture with their 254,000 subscribers, you bastards.
And what I mean by that is that a lot of them are saying this could easily lead to a film, to another series, that
God, please, no.
This feels like a return, not just a return to say goodbye.
Now, it should be returned to say goodbye, and really they said goodbye the best way possible in all good things. None of their movies any good. Half of one of them starred the original crew. It was tolerable. Everything else, pure garbage. First Contact, it looks okay, but when you think about it, it's the first terrible Trek movie and will one day be the subject of a saving Star Trek of its own.
But a return to form. Terry Matalas
Return to form!
reiterated the points that he has made in previous interviews, saying
Terry Matalas has reiterated the point
that no one is particularly safe.
Now that would include us, the audience, who will be blamed if you do not love this stupid show.
Going into this season. So it's not like all previous Star Treks where you pretty much know that when all the main characters beam down to a planet, they're all coming back again.
Now, yes, this is true, but I would like a return to that one time someone didn't come back. Can we bring back Armis? Can we send them to the planet where Armis is on to destroy this skin of evil being passed off as our beloved Star Trek?
The Rikers have been through enough. You know, they've lost Thad.
Now, we didn't see Thad except in a photograph, a still photograph, while their other child was off hunting venomous prey with a bow and arrow. In the 25th century, we got a look at the Rikers, and we saw what Troy and Riker, who are now married, have been up to. And thanks to Picard, it's really been a horror.
You know, we've already killed Picard in season 1. I mean,
that's something to keep in mind. Picard always has acted like C-3PO in the Picard show. He's nervous, he's always afraid, he's making useless intellectual observations, like the Admiral. And you know what? He's been like C-3PO. He's been afraid. And by the end of season 1, he is, in fact, an android. But don't use the A word. These androids are synths. They choose to identify as synths. That's right. We've taken the idea of self-identifying and made a joke of it in this bad, out-of-its-league Star Trek. Out of its league, discussing a hangnail, but taking on topics like racism and gender inequality, despite being written for particularly dumb third graders.
There's no atoms left of Data. You leave him alone. Worf lost his wife.
Worf did lose his wife.
Oh, come on, just
Then he kind of got a replacement wife. I don't know.
Just be nice to everyone, can we, please?
Sean, true Irish gentleman, just wants everyone to get along.
He did, however, further elaborate that this season not only sees the return...
Can you hear the NYPD coming here to try to stop this crime in progress? They don't want me to watch this NuTrek video. It's a health, welfare, and safety check. They're doing this to help me.
...of the next generation, but also something of a passing of the torch to the next generation.
Get that? Now here, this is now where we're getting into key information. We've reached about the 50% mark of Sean's video, and here's where he's going to start to tell us some real information. He's done circling the wagon and the drains. He's going to tell us the information.
There's been speculation as to what that means. Well, straight away we can go with the Laforge family.
No, you're wrong.
Both Sydney and Alandra Laforge feature in this season.
It makes sense, but you've overthought it, and this is something that these writers would never, ever think to do.
Along with, of course, the return of Geordi. So, are we going to see a return of Kestra Riker as well? Is Wesley Crusher going to beam in as the captain of the Enterprise F?
Oh, God. Wesley Crusher is... Will Wheaton was a great child actor, but when I saw his performance at the in the scene he had in Star Trek Picard where he talks to Sochi or Dash, I don't know. All I can say is, look at that actress's ankles. Look at her ankles. Look at that woman's ankles. They're strange. But when we see him appear to her, he laughs like this. Ha 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 ha. Will Wheaton, once one of the better child actors, as an adult seems to have fallen off his craft or just cannot get any help from the NuTrek people. He wouldn't be the first person who knew what they were doing to put in a terrible performance in their old role working for NuTrek. Patrick Stewart, horrible every time.
Is Alexander Roshenko going to be the best warrior that Kronos has ever seen? All right,
no.
That's stretching it a little bit. off the back of that statement, it does suggest that it's not simply the cast of the crew of the Enterprise D that we're going to see.
Okay, here it is.
That there is a wider scope as well.
A bigger scam at foot.
Something that I'm excited for because
now this is what's called Stockholm Syndrome. Sean is excited for this, and this term Stockholm Syndrome comes from a bank robbery and kidnapping in Stockholm, Sweden. I believe it was in the early 1970s. What happened was, after they foiled the bank robbery and freed the hostages and captured the bank robbers, there was a trial, as you would expect. At the trial, the most friendly witnesses for the violent criminals who took over the bank was, in fact, their own hostages. And that's when we discovered that if you're taken hostage and abused, you'll start to sympathize with your captor. This is why it's so easy for people to turn people against each other in a prisoner situation. If you've ever seen any of these POW war movies, The Castle, Stalag 17, there's always a prisoner who informs, there's always a bad guy, and how do they get it? By getting special treatment, by getting food, by snitching to the guards. And you know what? That break in the esprit de corps, that's the best friend of the NuTrek writers. Terry Matalas, he's good at turning us against each other, and he's going to turn us against each other right now. Do we want to see our old Star Trek heroes back in space fighting evil? Yes, we do. Do we get it? No. He gives us a tease of it, and then through his incompetence and the incompetence of his hiring and the incompetence of his writers, we get a Star Trek shit show. Sean?
because I am very excited to see these characters return, but I want to see what they've been doing.
Now, this is another phenomenon. We've already explained the Stockholm Syndrome, but this is the Mandela Effect, where he thinks that Star Trek Picard Season 1 and 2 were okay.
In the past couple of decades, obviously we've seen that with the Rikers, did everyone just stop at the end of Nemesis?
Yes.
Obviously not. So
No, they did.
I want to see what that looks like now, 20 years later. Matalas also went on to say that
the things Matalas says they're infuriating, but he is in charge, so to speak.
if there is to be something after season 3, if there is to be another series and other movies, it's down to the fans.
God, who would do this to people?
Are you suggesting that I killed my wife?
I'm suggesting that these people killed Star Trek, and what did they do it for?
Provasic.
Yeah, okay, if you say so.
So that our DU-90 could be approved and Devlin McGregor could give you Provasic.
So that Terry Matalas could give you the next generation. It's horrible. What keeps people coming back to this terrible Star Trek? What could it be that makes people so susceptible? What is it that brings us back?
It's a painful thing to watch a personality change because of
Because of what?
addiction.
Oh!
Personalities become twisted and distorted. It doesn't just impact the person using, but everyone around them that loves them.
And that's what we found out with this iteration of NuTrek. They are lying. This is not Star Trek. But Sean, please take us through to the end of your twisted and evil plan. Now, it's not Sean's plan. He's just relating it, but it's a twisted and evil plan. Sean seems nice enough.
And there is historical precedent for this. Think about between seasons 2 and season 3 of the original series, that amazing letter writing campaign.
It's weird. Sean he looks like my cousin Teag. My cousin's name is Teag too, and he actually lives in Ireland. And you know, Ireland, the third biggest market for Star Trek. Cousin Teag hates Star Trek now too.
A main spearheaded by Bijo and John Trimble got the show back for another season. Then the fan clamoring at conventions helped the animated series, and then later the film series.
Now, these things are true, but the fans that did this are fans that have been roundly rejected by Secret Hideout. So, Sean, it's apples and oranges. I'm sorry. They lied to you, buddy. They lied to you.
Get off the ground. And in recent years, fans have been responsible for getting Star Trek Strange New Worlds greenlit.
That is just not true. This Strange New Worlds was filmed with leftover money that was siphoned off from what you saw, a CW level Star Trek Discovery show and a near CW level Star Trek Picard show. A Star Trek Picard show so bad that they've used the budget from years after to go back and remake the ending again and again and again, adding more and more ships, trying to increase the size of the conflict that doesn't happen to make it look like it's of some substance. But really, it was really low rent when we saw it, and it doesn't change the fact that the robots on the planet are going to destroy all life in the universe, and the Federation decides that they're going to make a stand to allow the robots to choose for themselves whether they get to kill you and I. And the only thing that's going to stop them is the good guy Romulans. That's how insane Star Trek Season 1 was. Picard Season 1 was.
To say that it's up to the fans, that actually is a very direct call to action for people like us who want to see more.
Just right from the mouths of his Star Trek handlers, action, activism, go after the people who don't like it, agitate for this movie. That's what they're telling us to do.
Of this era of Star Trek, we want to see post-Nemesis, but we don't
really want to see anymore.
We don't want to go as far as the 32nd century. We want to see what's going on in this time and place.
No, we don't.
Yes, we have a little about Lower Decks. Yes.
God, to reference that.
Yes, we have a little of that with Prodigy.
Another horrible show.
Call me a sucker. I like live action as well. So
see, here's the thing. They've got all these old Star Trek cast members back on the reservation. If you don't think they're going to take Kate Mulgrew and just fastball her into any Star Trek movie they can so that they can just have a... I'm telling you, we're going to get a Star Trek gangbang of different Star Trek multiversal realities December 23rd of this year. Now, the reason why I say multiverse is because these writers are far too talentless and self-aware to try a time travel story. They would just fuck it up.
I want to see more in that world. We have an ally in Terry Matalas. He wants to see more TNG.
This is the Stockholm Syndrome right here. An ally in Terry Matalas. An ally in Terry Matalas. And here is just... It's a picture of Sonequa Martin Green, Patrick Stewart, and Kate Mulgrew, and it's telling you subtly that we are going to just throw all this together and call it a movie. They have to make this movie. They've announced it too many times. It no longer matters to them how they get there.
He also said that he wants to see more Voyager. Specifically, he wants to see the return of Janeway and how...
Yeah, that's no one wants to see that. We've already got Janeway back in Prodigy.
Her relationship with Seven of Nine has evolved.
Oh God, we can only imagine Seven of Nine, now a lesbian, just out of nowhere. She in Star Trek, you decide what your orientation is. You're not born that way. Seven of Nine, born a heterosexual, now a lesbian.
In the couple of decades since Voyager returned to the Alpha Quadrant. One of the things that's really special about this issue of SF...
Oh, God, what's special about it?
Effects is the exclusive interviews, not just with Terry Matalas...
Oh, do tell, who else?
But also with Jonathan Frakes and Gates McFadden.
I'm just taking my anti-seizure medicine here because this has been some real nonsense.
There are some absolute pearls in here. I don't want to give too much away, but if I just look at Frakes just for a second,
right,
he definitely seems to be, kind of on the same boat that this might not be the end.
Jonathan Frakes always agitating for more Star Trek, no matter what the quality. He doesn't care. He just wants it to happen.
There's also a very cool little tidbit about the Strange New Worlds Lower Decks crossover that...
this is going to destroy any respectability that Strange New Worlds has if you're paying attention. But Star Trek these days, NuTrek, always counting on you not paying attention, and only has a very, very few, very low information fans who forget the canon from show to show.
That we know is coming up in Season 2 of Strange New Worlds. Check it out for that alone, if nothing else. But
there is no reason to watch Lower Decks or Strange New Worlds.
to go to the point again about Frakes saying that this might not be the end, the fun thing there is how Jonathan Frakes seems to be feeling completely the opposite.
Okay, we know Frakes made a bid to be director of this movie and was turned down. That's why I have a terrible feeling that the director of this will be none other than JJ himself. All signs pointing towards it. And we're about 80% of the way through this insidious NuTrek intelligence.
To Captain Riker, because in a little teaser that was dropped online there recently ahead of the upcoming American kickball game that's taking place this
He's talking about fucking football for our fellow Americans.
Sunday, there is a couple of more shots of the Enterprise F.
F that Enterprise. We found out it's the Enterprise G.
Pretty cool voiceover from Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, pretty cool voiceover from a man who's had his nose broken for facelifts so many times he no longer sounds like himself.
That, seems to be very much in the spirit of all those soccer ball speeches and inspirational things.
What the fuck are you talking about, Sean?
It's about, we'll push forward and, we'll face the baddie and everything. But
Let's make sure that history never associates the name Enterprise with quality again.
in this clip, we specifically have Riker stating, "This is the end."
They're saying it's the end, but what they're going to do is, it's this. There's going to be a new rebooted TNG crew with a new cast. They're not going to be anyone of note. They're going to go bottom of the barrel. They're going to get the cheapest talent they can. There will be no one in this cast who has any acting talent or any acting resume. They are going to give you the cheapest, shittiest next generation that they can manage. They don't have any money.
My friend. Well, you've got a bit of a dichotomy there, don't you? So yes, it seems like Terry Matalas seems to have confirmed online that there will be another trailer.
Okay, so there's more bad news in the offing. We've seen the teaser, and I would bet that the teaser is everything they filmed so far, and now, honestly, we've seen how bad Reboot and Secret Hideout does this. They're going to film 6 or 7 trailers and try to string them together with a plot.
For Star Trek Picard Season 3 dropping during that big soccer bowl thing that's happening this weekend. I believe it's some sort of sports
I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
event. I'm going to stick with Parisi Squares myself. Who knows what that's going to reveal? Are we going to get more shots of the Enterprise F?
F that Enterprise?
Yes, please. Are we going to get, the reveal, the glorious reveal of Sela or something?
Huh? Oh my god, Denise Crosby could be back.
Yes, Sela has been absolutely confirmed to be not appearing in Season 3 of Star Trek Picard, but I can dream, damn.
Man, Denise Crosby didn't come to a good ending with the nice Star Trek people. I can only imagine how the horrible Star Trek people feel about her, but you know what? There's a character who played a strong woman that wasn't even reached out to. We've heard nothing from her about being asked to be on Star Trek, have we?
Damn it, I can dream. In the meantime, make sure that you pick up that lovely collector's edition of SFX magazine. Remember, you can catch us all on Twitter at...
Okay, so we already gave you his Twitter address. We hope that you'll like and follow the Admiral. And, after seeing that, I mean, what could we hope for Star Trek? There's gotta be... What could be worse than this?
Computer. This is Admiral James T. Kirk. Request security access.
Yes, it's the only way.
Computer. Destruct sequence 1. Code 1. 1A.
No movie at all would be better than this movie. No movie at all would be better than this movie. No one wants to see
Computer.
this. Who could this be?
Commander Montgomery Scott, Chief Engineering Officer.
This is getting pretty serious.
Destruct sequence 2. Code 1, 1A, 2B.
Well, what can I say? This entire series of events couldn't be more unfortunate. The people from Trek Culture have 254,000 subscribers lapping this up. There are 3.2 thousand thumbs up and 105 thumbs down. Now 106 on Trek Culture. I need this NuTrek intelligence source, so I am subscribing to them. Crime recaps had been my go-to until now, but we just have to exploit all the intelligence sources we can. This has been another update on the Star Trek movie. And now, as promised, we're going to have a serious moment here. This day in 1986, it was a national tragedy. And rather than try to recount it myself, let us remember with the words we heard then. We lost 7 heroes, 7 explorers, exploring the boundaries of space, doing what Gene Roddenberry and the best aspects of Star Trek have always inspired us to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd planned to speak to you tonight to report on the State of the Union. But the events of earlier today have led me to change those plans. Today is a day for mourning and remembering. Nancy and I are pained to the core by the tragedy of the Shuttle Challenger. We know we share this pain with all of the people of our country. This is truly a national loss. 19 years ago, almost to the day, we lost 3 astronauts in a terrible accident on the ground. But we've never lost an astronaut in flight. We've never had a tragedy like this. And perhaps we've forgotten the courage it took for the crew of the shuttle. But they, the Challenger 7, were aware of the dangers, but overcame them and did their jobs brilliantly. We mourn 7 heroes: Michael Smith, Dick Scobie, Judith Resnick, Ronald McNair, Ellison Onizuka, Gregory Jarvis, and Krista McAuliffe. We mourn their loss as a nation together. The families of the 7, we cannot bear, as you do, the full impact of this tragedy. But we feel the loss, and we're thinking about you so very much. Your loved ones were daring and brave, and they had that special grace, that special spirit that says, give me a challenge, and I'll meet it with joy. They had a hunger to explore the universe and discover its truths. They wished to serve, and they did. They served all of us. We've grown used to wonders in this century. It's hard to dazzle us. But for 25 years, the United States space program has been doing just that. We've grown used to the idea of space, and perhaps we forget that we've only just begun. We're still pioneers. They, the members of the Challenger crew, were pioneers. And I want to say something to the school children of America who were watching the live coverage of the shuttle's takeoff. I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery. It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizons. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow them. I've always had great faith in and respect for our space program, and what happened today does nothing to diminish it. We don't hide our space program. We don't keep secrets and cover things up. We do it all up front and in public. That's the way freedom is, and we wouldn't change it for a minute. We'll continue our quest in space. There will be more shuttle flights and more shuttle crews, and yes, more volunteers, more civilians, more teachers in space. Nothing ends here. Our hopes and our journeys continue. I want to add that I wish I could talk to every man and woman who works for NASA or who worked on this mission and tell them your dedication and professionalism have moved and impressed us for decades, and we know of your anguish. We share it. There's a coincidence today. On this day, 390 years ago, the great explorer Sir Francis Drake died aboard ship off the coast of Panama. In his lifetime, the great frontiers were the oceans, and a historian later said he lived by the sea, died on it, and was buried in it. Well, today, we can say of the Challenger crew, their dedication was, like Drake's, complete. The crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger honored us for the manner in which they lived their lives. We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them, this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye, and slipped the surly bonds of Earth to touch the face of God. Thank you.
To the crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger, we remember you. We remember you, and we respect the bravery it took for you to slip the surly bonds of Earth to touch the face of God. Star Trek fans, if you like what you heard, please like and follow this channel. We need you. We're stronger with you than without you. We need to fight the Stockholm Syndrome that makes people think that this new, terrible NuTrek is acceptable, and the Mandela Effect that tells people that it's always been this way. Star Trek should be a 1-hour show that's good enough for regular TV and mostly makes sense. It's your buddy, Admiral Teag, signing off.